Welcome to the MSL 411, a podcast designed to equip both aspiring and experienced MSLs with the resources they need to level up their career toolkit. The heart of this podcast is to take the same industry knowledge and advice that we share with our own candidates and make it available and accessible to anyone looking for answers. So if you have questions, you've come to the right place. We're here to give you the 411. And without further ado, let's dive right in. Hi, and welcome back to MSL 411. We have another great topic that we're going to be covering for you today. And we're going to be talking about how best to captivate your audience when you're in a virtual interview setting. I know I've been recruiting MSLs for a long time, so I remember the days when everything was face-to-face. Much of the interview portion was face-to-face. And so I've seen a lot of change over the past few years. Of course, 2020 came overnight, everything went virtual. And so now we've gotten really accustomed to that virtual world. So we've all adapted. It's not going anywhere. These days, we kind of see a good mix of things being virtual or in person. But I think a lot of people right now, whether they're MSLs looking to fine tune their skills or maybe folks looking to get into the medical affairs industry and maybe not quite as familiar with that virtual interview setting for MSL roles, we're going to be talking about some tips and tricks that'll just really level up your skills in that area. So I want to kick it off. Ashley's done a lot of research in this topic, so I thought no better person to ask than her today. So we're going to be doing a little interview. But Ashley, for anyone who's trying to improve their virtual presence in that interview setting, what are going to be some of the most important things to fine tune or to master?
Yeah, well, it's essential. It's an essential element of the MSL role, being charismatic, being engaging, being able to be memorable in the mind of your KOL or the person you're presenting to. And so I think that many people would agree that for the more kind of naturally charismatic personality type of video interview can be a little bit of a hindrance. They can't lean on some of the things that they usually lean on. It presents a new set of challenges to convey that engaging, charismatic personality style. And I think when you're talking about what it is that makes somebody charismatic, it's usually includes a couple of things. It is that mastery of effective body language, eye contact, vocal inflection or intonation, and then of course the ability to storytell and that actual content piece of what the messages that they are sending. And so I think these are the skills that really create that trusted connection and what somebody would need to look at to kind of do that self-evaluation to see what might need some fine tuning.
Yeah. So if somebody has, taken a good close look at themselves and great, we've identified some areas where we might need some work, some little fine tuning as you called it, but what would be next after that, in your opinion?
Yeah, well, you really need to, I think about it in terms of amplifying other areas to overcome the limitations of technology and to shine in a virtual interview setting. When you are behind the camera versus in front of someone personally, there's a little bit more of an even playing field. So somebody who kind of naturally has a super tall, dominating presence, I think anybody listening probably has somebody that's come to mind where, as soon as you start talking to that person, you're more engaged simply by the physicality of who they are, be it their height or maybe it's even their voice. Maybe they have a very sweet sounding voice or, something about them. There's all kinds of cues that our bodies are signaling when we're engaging in conversation. And in order to really convey a level of engagement over that virtual environment, we need to think about what it is we have to overcome. Since we can't rely on those natural qualities, there's also, somebody who's maybe a little bit more quiet natured or somebody who's a little bit more louder. The volume in their voice might be the thing that engages you about that person. That's all leveled out because we all have the same volume. And so, when it's entirely based on your microphone settings, you can't really use that to your advantage anymore. So you have to use your voice well. Really take some time to look at, do you have the right pitch, the right tempo to maintain somebody's attention? Is that vocal inflection engaging? Is it inflection in the right spots? Being intentional with your posture. Now that I'm talking about posture, we all sit up a little bit taller, right? Getting good deep breaths. It impacts the cadence of your conversation, the sound of your voice. It sends a signal to the listener or the person watching. your engagement in the interview process. Even I'm looking at our laptops here, our camera screens are down from where we're sitting, up from where our other camera is here. But one of the pieces of advice I often give is if you are doing an interview, set your laptop on a couple of those old pharmacy school textbooks and take advantage of the opportunity to get that video more eye level with you, and really try and duplicate the in-person environment as much as possible. So you're not hunched over looking down at the camera. Being intentional about these things will show a more personal touch to the video setting, and leaning in to show engagement. It shows you're listening versus speaking straight and tall. These are all little things that you signal with your body language to the listener that conveys a message. And so we want to look at your posture. We want to look at your pitch, your tone, hand gestures. Hand gestures are probably not going to be something that is seen on camera because it's kind of taking place below the screen. And so if you're somebody who uses your hands, that's something about you that's really engaging. You don't have that to your advantage. These different elements of your body language are far less perceivable. So other visual elements will play a greater role. And so we need to look at things like your clothing choice. Those sorts of things will be under greater scrutiny because we don't have other elements of that in-person connection to kind of distract the listener. Facial movements and the tone of your voice, they matter that much more because there is much less for somebody to look at when all they can see on the screen is your voice. So I think, when you're in the interview, when you're in the presentation stage of the interview, that's another element that we need to think about because your video may not even be on the screen. I know there's Zoom, Teams, and some of the different platforms all handle it a little bit differently. Sometimes you're a little box in the corner. Sometimes you can't even be seen at all when you're in the presentation stage of the interview. And so it's unlikely the interviewer is watching your face on full screen in that particular setting. And so again, that goes back to the tone of your voice, the cadence of your voice, how inviting it is, what that inflection is like. All of these things have to be kind of overcompensated to make up for the fact that some of those visual cues, body language are missing and absent from that presentation stage specifically. And so this is where thinking about and practicing using your voice well is very important to maintain the attention of the person listening and of the person that's interviewing you.
Yeah. So there's a lot of limitations that people have to overcome and, look out for those sorts of things. What are some tips, some ideas, some maybe general areas where people might add some things into their interview experience or maybe overcompensate in some areas to make up for the virtual nature of this type of interview?
Yeah. Well, that's a great question. And I think one of the things that you really need to start the discussion with is keeping in mind the fact that people are dealing with different internet quality speeds. Video is a lot slower, obviously, than in person. And so some of the things that you can do to overcompensate for that is to draw out your movements. So what I mean by that is a small gesture that you might make. Let's take, for example, a smile. If you're smiling at somebody's, cheeky comment or something in the presentation or interview, I can flash a quick smile to you and you will see it, and that message is received in this face-to-face environment. In the virtual environment, their internet lags for just a second. They're going to completely miss that gesture. Well, now that interaction hasn't happened. And if you, as the interviewer, make a little joke or make a little comment and you're not getting that feedback of, oh, they picked it up, simply due to the fact that, they had a little lag in their connection, that's going to change the dynamic of that interview. And so if you are trying to strategize on how to better or how to overcompensate for the challenges of that virtual interview, you need to draw these movements out. So hold that smile for a little bit longer to really be sure that they saw it, or maybe hold your laugh for a little bit longer, or these little gestures that show that you're listening, that you're engaged, that you are attentive to what they're saying. Take the time to really make those things more noticeable and receive that smile, or maybe it's a nod, whatever it is, to ensure that they don't miss it.
Such good points and stuff that people might not think to do.
No, no, because it would be unnatural and it would be awkward if I just kept smiling for too long after the gesture had passed. But if your voice gets distorted for just a second, slow and clear communication will give you your best chance of being heard. It would behoove you to slow down your communication, really focus on enunciating when you are in that particular environment, because you just don't know what kind of connection, what they're receiving on their side. And you don't want a missed word, a missed syllable, some piece of what you're trying to say be lost to the point where they're trying to catch up to, wait, but what was going on here? And then, they get off topic, they get distracted because of just the reality of internet difficulties, which we all have.
Yeah. This day and age.
Yes. You could be the most tech savvy person in the world, but your internet doesn't work, it doesn't work. So, don't take a opportunity for the technology piece of it to pull away and to distract. Really draw those movements out, speak slowly, speak concisely and clearly so that your listener can catch everything it is that you are trying to say. And as you're preparing for your interview, take the time to build into your presentation moments for you to get that feedback. Maybe invite more feedback in than you would had it been an in-person conversation. So the last thing I'll say is, keep your background clean and free of distractions. I know that this is obvious, but if persuasion is your target, you want the least distracting background and backdrop for your video. Some people have gorgeous, beautiful backgrounds behind their video screens. I love that Twitter feed that was like rating people on their video backdrops. And some of them are beautiful and they have a lot going on behind them. And I think even though it is beautiful in and of itself, something that has too much going on can be distracting. And you don't want to create the opportunity for your background to distract from your message. Like I said, persuasion is your goal. You really want you and what you have to say to be the centerpiece of what they are seeing. I would also say kind of the same concept for your clothing as well. Make sure that your clothing is just simple, professional, of course, but simple, free of distractions. Anything too shiny, anything that's making too much noise that might be picked up by your headset. Ladies, the dangly earrings, whatever the case may be. Those little distractions can pop up because of your clothing, and you just want to do as much as you can to keep the focus on the message and not invite those distractions.
Yeah, no, great points.
So, lastly, to kind of wrap up our conversation, I think the other side of this is we talked a lot about, okay, I know what areas I need to work on when it comes to having that charismatic personality type. But there is this scenario where there may be people listening who don't know what it is that they need to work on. And I think that's the other side of the conversation that has a really simple answer. What would you say to that?
Yeah, I mean, there are going to be people out there that are maybe a little less self-aware of the issues where they struggle more than other areas. And so there's a couple of things you can do. First, you can phone your friend. You can ask a friend or a family member to watch you present or to jump on a Zoom call with you so they can get the full virtual experience and just see, are you projecting yourself correctly? Are you easy to understand? Are you talking slowly enough? Are you, getting involved and making your body language speak as well? So things like that. You can also record yourself presenting, whether it's on Zoom or PowerPoint, just deliver your presentation or, have that conversation, just whatever you need to do to kind of practice and see how your virtual presence comes across on the screen. I think it's going to be super helpful. Another thing you can do, of course, if you're working with a recruiter, we are here to be your practice buddy in those situations. So we can always
happy to watch.
We can practice with you and give you great pointers. We get feedback from hiring managers and companies all the time. So I feel like we have a pretty good, viewpoint on what is going to translate really well in that virtual setting and what might not so much. So, those are just a couple of good options. Practice makes perfect. The more you practice, the more you get in that virtual environment, the more comfortable you're going to be with it.
Absolutely.
And so not everybody has 10,000 interviews lined up virtually to get all that practice in. So these are just some options for being able to practice in a virtual setting.
Yeah. All great things to offer up somebody who is looking to get some constructive feedback. about areas for improvement. We're happy to provide it, but it's also great to get multiple perspectives because we all can learn from each other and we all perceive different things differently too. So, getting more than one perspective would always be great. So, we hope that some of the tips that we have offered you have been helpful and some things to think about for the next time you're preparing for that video conversation, video interview. We all want to embrace change as it comes, but we also want to be intentional to think about the challenges that come with it when we're talking about the virtual setting and not having that same type of communication that we have in person, of course. So please text us with any topics that we can cover, topics like these where you guys would like to know some tips and tricks for the interview process and ways that we can help you improve your skills as aspiring MSLs, experienced MSLs, wherever you fall within there. Thanks so much for tuning in.
Thanks for tuning in. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to share the link, let your friends know, and of course, connect with us on LinkedIn. And if you want more information on today's topic, please feel free to reach out. Be sure to check back soon as we continue to explore the topics that matter most to you in medical affairs.